welcome to The Grill, a new series from Saurav Insight. For most of my life, the current decided where I went. I worked hard, but I wasn't the one steering. The series is about learning to steer. I am Saurabh Sharma, an immigrant, a father, and a digital specialist figuring out West London. I haven't figured it all out yet. I'm just a guy in his 40s trying to build. You're hearing my real voice right now, but for the main episode, I use an AI. I'd rather use the technology I have to seep honest thought today than wait for the perfect studio or the perfect moment. This is The Grill. Welcome to the construction site.
Last time, I talked about the accumulation, the weight that built up until the old structure could not hold anymore. I mentioned a first tool, a thread someone handed me in a dark moment. Today I want to tell you what that thread was, and what happened when I started pulling it. I want to start with something practical. If you have ever tried to meditate and given up, if you sat down, closed your eyes, and within 30 seconds your mind was somewhere else entirely, I want to tell you something a reputed yogi once said when he was asked exactly that question. He said, that is what the mind is supposed to do. Wandering is not failure. It is just the mind being a mind. The practice is not stopping the wandering. The practice is noticing it, and gently, without frustration, bringing yourself back. That one idea changed everything for me. Because I had given up too. Many times. I thought presence was for other people. Calmer people, less complicated people, people who didn't have my particular chaos running in the background. I was wrong. I didn't come to meditation through a retreat, a course, or a carefully curated morning routine. I came to it through a friend. His name is Raghu. Raghu is one of those rare friends who sharpens you without trying to. He took me hiking to edges I wouldn't have found alone. He introduced me to discipline when I was still confusing motion with direction. And one day, after returning from a Vipassana retreat, he handed me something I didn't know I needed. Not a book, not a technique, just 2 questions. What are the things that make you happy? What are the things that make you sad? That was it. That was the thread. I sat with those questions. I wrote everything down. And what I found surprised me. One of the things that came up under makes me sad was something I had been carrying for a long time. A project I had built my life around. An agro-tourism farm. I left everything for it. Invested years. All my savings. And it failed. For a long time, I carried that as something unfinished. Something lost. But when I sat with it honestly, I had to ask, does this still matter to my life right now? I saw the patch. I saw what happened. The mistakes. My part in it. For a long time, I had blamed others, but when I looked at it honestly, that wasn't enough anymore. And slowly, without forcing it, I stopped carrying it. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer belonged to the life I am living now. And when I looked at the other side, under makes me happy, something quieter showed up. My home. A small backyard. Herbs grow without effort. A morning path near the national park. I had, in a smaller and more real way, the thing I thought I had lost. I just wasn't looking at it. Morning walks. The garden. Fresh mojito in the summer. Small gatherings around a firewood oven. Nothing about it was a project, and that's exactly why it worked. That was the first patch I went into properly. It wouldn't be the last. What I discovered is that the subconscious is full of patches. Old memories, old versions of people, old situations that never got resolved. They sit there quietly underneath everything, until something in the present triggers one and we react in ways that confuse even ourselves. Vipassana for me became the practice of going into those patches. Not all of them, not at once, but deliberately look at myself as objectively as possible. Not as someone who needs to defend himself, but as an observer, without bias, without an agenda. Looking at yourself without being yourself. I have heard some intellectuals say that true objectivity with oneself, seeing yourself without bias, is only possible through certain substances. I understand where that idea comes from. Out of curiosity and through my own experiments during that period, I explored some of those paths. What I found, and this is my personal experience, nothing more, is that meditation, practiced with real commitment, is more powerful, fuller, cleaner. The clarity I found on the rooftop in Golfuttar, through fasting and daily practice, was the most honest I had ever been with myself. Not because it was comfortable, because there was nothing between me and what was actually there. Substances can give you a glimpse of that state, but meditation takes you there in the purest form and brings you back safely with something you can actually use. There is a specific kind of fog that is hard to explain. Watching your own life from behind glass. Present, but not present. Moving, but not steering. I just called it the fog, and I think many people listening to this will know exactly what I mean, even if they have never had a word for it either. But understanding that the fog was a phase, not a permanent state, not a definition of who I was, helped me approach those patches with less fear and more curiosity. Some patches I went into and found things that needed to be felt and released. Some I removed entirely. And some, I will be honest, I have not gone into yet. You cannot force the inner work any more than you can force a season to change. The important thing is, I know they are there. That awareness itself is a form of presence. During the lockdown period, I ended up in Shivapuri National Park, guiding a mycologist researching wild mushrooms. We stayed in the kuti of a Baba who had lived in that jungle for years. I was in a heightened state. The meditation had been going well, and I made the mistake that excited people make. I told him everything. He listened carefully. And then he said something I have carried since. He suggested that experiences like these are deeply personal, that not everyone has the context to understand them. The details of an inner journey can sound incomprehensible to someone who hasn't walked a similar path, not because they are not real, but because they are yours, completely yours. Much later, I came across Eckhart Tolle, and he said the same thing from a completely different direction. Never share your spiritual experiences with others. They are truly yours. Everyone's path is different. The Baba in the jungle and Eckhart Tolle in his talk, different languages, different worlds, same wisdom. Some things are better carried than explained, and wisdom, when it is real, tends to arrive from more than one direction. I want to be honest about what the practice looks like today. Baby, full-time job, company, product launch, series. Life does not pause for meditation, but presence is not a session. It is an operating system. Noticing when I am in my head versus in the room. Noticing when I am reacting versus responding. Noticing when the energy is there and using it. Noticing when I am burning out and slowing down before it becomes a problem. I know my own inner weather now. That is the practice. Here is something I have not said publicly before. The algorithm Audit, the framework I am building around the digital parrot cage, did not come from research. It came from sitting with myself and asking one honest question. What is killing my time? I was emotionally attached to things that had nothing to do with my actual life. Political debates, geopolitics, news cycles that only needed my attention, not my participation. I was not informed. I was hijacked. And when I looked around, especially at people building a life away from home, I saw the same pattern everywhere. Time is going into things that drain, while the things that actually build, skills, family, direction, get what is left. When you are building a life in a new country, time behaves differently. You don't have the luxury of drifting. One intentional news session a day. 20 to 30 minutes from sources that are not algorithmically curated. That last part matters. Algorithmically curated news doesn't show you the world. It shows you what keeps you angry, anxious, and coming back for more. Non-curated news means you are choosing what to know, not being chosen for. That is the whole difference. One session a day, one longer session at the end of the week. Informed but not hijacked, and then back to the work of building your actual life. What I now call the Clarity Design Tea didn't start as a product. It started as a ritual, not something to optimize performance, just something to create space. This is not a productivity tool. This is where you come when your thoughts are louder than your direction. You don't need more thoughts, you need clearer ones. Make your tea, sit down, take a sip. What is actually overwhelming your mind right now? Don't try to organize it. Just notice it. Every confusion has a history, but it doesn't come in order. It comes in fragments, moments, phases, memories. Let it come as it is, and then slowly look at what is actually pulling your time, your energy, your attention away. What matters? What doesn't? What needs to change? What is the next small move? The tea and the practice are not separate things. They are the same transition, in different forms, from scattered to intentional. The practice is never finished. The patches don't all disappear. The fog doesn't stay gone forever. But once you know how to return to yourself, not as an idea, but as something you have actually experienced, the fog becomes less frightening. It doesn't disappear. You just stop mistaking it for who you are. And once that happens, you can find your way back. Every time. Next time, connecting the dots. What I found when I went back through the whole life and wrote it all down. The patterns that only become visible when you stop moving long enough to look. I'm Saurav, this is The Drill, and see you next episode.